Most trainers know that they should periodize their training programs for clients. After all, the human body is a highly adaptive system. Give it the same stimulus day in and day out, and it will eventually adapt, reach homeostasis, and stop responding. Thus, fat loss or muscle gain, whatever the objective is, will stop. By periodizing training, you can avoid letting the body get too comfortable and strategically drive it to continue to burn fat or put on muscle or whatever else the objective is. Well, the same goes for nutrition. When you want the body to change, no plan will work forever. The body is an incredibly sophisticated machine optimized for finding a comfortable balance. If left undisturbed, it will quickly find homeostasis and stop responding to the stimulus. This is why we need a strategy for periodizing nutrition with our clients. As we've already discussed, Gen Pop clients aren't like you. They aren't athletes. They aren't lean. They are facing many physiological challenges due to inactivity, stress, and high body fat that you never have to contend with. For this reason, what works on you isn't necessarily going to work on your client. In fact, what works on you could very well make your client worse. For the art of Gen Pop transformation system, we like to start clients on a diet bootcamp. We begin by setting their caloric deficit. We use the same system we've already discussed where we match the user's current body fat to a target caloric deficit. Once we understand how many calories to allocate, we then look at protein requirements. Again, we use the targets we've already discussed, accounting for gender, lifestyle, and body weight. We limit carbohydrate intake to 50 grams and fill in the rest of their diet with healthy fats, focusing on meeting their essential fatty acid requirements. You may remember from an earlier lesson that when it comes to nutrition, advanced clients need flexibility. Gen Pop clients need rules and structure. So with the diet bootcamp so far, we've given you the structure. Now let's get into the rules. When it comes to protein, your client should be consuming a diversity, especially initially. Beef, lamb, pork, game meat, chicken, turkey, fish, eggs, etc. We do this for 4 reasons. First, keeping your food sources diverse ensures you are not contributing to any particular food intolerance. You may have met people before who stop eating red meat for an extended period of time. Then as soon as they try a burger, it sits with them for days when they never had issues with it before. Keeping things diverse ensures the body doesn't lose its ability to handle a variety of proteins. Second, we minimize the risk of introducing excessive environmental contaminants. Nowadays, soils are contaminated and these toxic compounds enter the food chain. Oceans, the same. By rotating food sources, we ensure lower levels of, for example, mercury, aluminium, titanium, and other metals in our nutrition. Third, this way we ensure that more nutrition is included in the diet. Different sources of protein are rich in different nutrients. For example, beef is high in zinc, fish high in omega-3 fatty acids, etc. By eating different proteins, we ensure the opportunity for the body to take in all these micronutrients that are necessary to optimize our health. Finally, eating from a diversity of proteins makes things interesting. Gen Pop clients aren't ready for the experience of a comp prep diet. They need their meals to look something like a normal diet to help them process it mentally. If you feed them a comp prep diet, they will get very bored very quickly and then be tempted by things that are not in your plan. Remember, we need to anticipate and plan for compliance. For carbs, the plan is simple. Veggies. Lots of them. In fact, as far as carbs go in these first 4 weeks of the diet bootcamp, we only allow veggies for carbs. This does 2 things. First, it provides the system with vital micronutrients that will support everything from mood to brain and heart health. Second, it will dramatically improve satiety as veggies are full of fibre. Most Gen Pop clients aren't used to getting the recommended amount of fibre, and as a result, they have gut health and satiety issues. The diet bootcamp addresses and corrects this. Fats are also quite simple. They naturally come from our protein sources. Unlike keto, where additional fats are needed to make up the calories you need after protein, in the diet bootcamp, you are eating lots of protein, so there's less of a gap to make up. If your client is eating a variety of protein sources, they will be getting richer proteins like beef, lamb, salmon, and chicken. Hitting the fat target just won't be an issue. We run the diet bootcamp for 2 to 4 weeks, with less experienced clients more on the 4-week end of the spectrum. These less experienced clients need longer to help address insulin and leptin resistance. A more experienced client might only need the diet bootcamp for 2 weeks as they quickly undo what little, if any, metabolic damage they may be suffering. This leaves the remaining 8 to 10 weeks to periodize. What approach should we take? Well, just like everything in the art of Gen Pop transformation system, we need to consider our client. Let's start with the beginner client. Experience shows that the vast majority of beginner clients come to us feeling terrible. The diet bootcamp makes them start to feel better almost instantly by allowing them to feel satiated from their meals and by giving them the micronutrients their bodies have been sorely missing. But eventually, we start to see signs of adaptations and new problems come to the surface. Most of these clients also need carbohydrates, so we want to strategically reintroduce these back into the diet by first starting with 1 carb meal in the 4 weeks after the diet bootcamp. This meal should incorporate 30 to 40 grams of carbohydrates, basically doubling the client's carb intake for the day. Where you add the meal should be based on the client's personal preference. Studies show that carbohydrate timing is largely individual, and it may be linked to a person's biological circadian rhythm. Apart from regulating the sleep-wake cycle, melatonin has been shown to impair glucose tolerance in about 50% of the population. That means people who are naturally early birds might do best having their carb meal earlier in the day, typically before lunch, while night owls, who naturally struggle to fall asleep at night, may do better having their carb meal in the evening. That's because carbs can increase serotonin, and serotonin converts to melatonin. Another good option would be to add the carb meal post-training. Post-training, our stress hormones like cortisol, adrenaline, and noradrenaline are elevated. After the training bout, we want to get ourselves out of the fight or flight mode as quickly as possible to initiate the recovery process. Acute carbohydrate intake has been shown to dampen the cortisol response to mental and physical stresses. For the third phase of periodization, we introduce another carb meal consisting of an additional 30 to 40 grams. Again, this meal can be placed earlier in the day or later in the day depending on the client's preference and their circadian rhythm. We typically recommend 1 carb meal post-training and the other carb meal earlier or later in the day depending on the client's needs. You can experiment a bit here to see what works best for each client. This plan is very straightforward, but there are some important details to remember. For beginner clients, we only periodize macros, not calories. That means for every calorie of carbohydrate you introduce, you take away a calorie of fat. We keep our client on the same caloric deficit throughout their 12 weeks with us in this system. We are after fast and continuous fat loss, and given there's so much fat to lose, there's not much point in playing around with the deficit. We need to get them in a big deficit and keep them there so we can get epic results. You should also remember that when it comes to macros, we're trying to make our clients feel good. You eventually encounter a Gen Pop client who responds horribly to carbs. Recall in our discussion on oxidation rates that some people, regardless of body type, just don't handle faster energy sources well. If, as you start introducing carbs to your client, they don't feel amazing as a result, then back off the carbs and get back to the fats. There's nothing magical about adding carbs in place of fats here, at least not as far as the fat loss is concerned. The caloric deficit is doing the heavy lifting for us here, and we are just using carbohydrates as a way to make our clients feel better and better as we go. Don't rigidly stick to a carbohydrate target if it makes your client feel worse. Finally, you may run into the typical media-driven misconceptions about diet as you implement this with your client. Many Gen Pop clients will be horrified at the thought of eating carbs before bed. Won't carbs make you fatter? Remember, it's your job as a coach to educate and lead your client. Don't let them get confused by junk science. Explain that it's the caloric deficit that causes fat loss, not the macro split. Remind them that people get sleepy after carbs for a reason, and that a good night's sleep is crucial to health and well-being. Give them the confidence that thousands of people have been on this journey before them. Thousands have done precisely what you're telling them to do and have gotten amazing results. be the coach that's going to change your client's life. Next, let's look at an intermediate training. These clients come to you a little bit leaner and a little bit more experienced in the gym. Being leaner means we have to be more clever with our interventions. With relatively less fat to lose, their bodies will be far more adaptive, and periodization will become crucial to getting continued success with them. As with all Gen Pop clients, we start the intermediate training on the diet bootcamp. This time, we run the bootcamp for 2 weeks only. Then, just as with our beginner clients, we introduce carbs, although for these more experienced trainees, we add more carbs initially. We go straight to a low carb approach, landing somewhere near 120 grams of carbohydrate per day. The client will stay here for 4 weeks. For the average intermediate trainee, this is the point where we start to see negative metabolic adaptations kick in. Leptin levels begin to go down and hunger, as a result, goes up. Thyroid levels go down, so the metabolism starts to downregulate. As the metabolism downregulates, training performance suffers and NEAT levels go down, throwing off the calories outside of our energy balance equation. This is the right time to implement a diet break to help reset the metabolism. For 5 days, we bring total calories back to the baseline, and we do so by making up the deficit primarily in carbohydrates. A good guide to use in setting carbohydrates during a diet break is to calculate lean body mass and multiply by 7. If the trainee prefers a lower carb approach, multiply lean body mass by 5 instead. So for example, an 80 kilogram trainee at 18% body fat will have about 65 kilos of lean body mass. This client should have between 325 and 455 grams of carbs for the week of their diet break. After a 5-day diet break, this trainee will be fully reset and ready to go back into the deficit. Despite being intermediate, we still want rapid fat loss, so we now tune our calories by going 5% deeper into deficit than where we started. Again, we do this on a low carb macro split with our 120 grams of carbs split between post-workout and bedtime. For the final 2 weeks, we go 5% more aggressive on the calorie deficit to ensure we hit the 12-week finish line with a solid body composition finish. Just like with our beginner clients, our intermediate plan has some important considerations for you as a coach. First, leaner clients are more prone to metabolic adaptation, so we need to be smarter with our periodization. We can't run clients like this on a perpetual deficit. Doing so will risk shutting down their metabolism and halting or reversing our gains. We strategically implement a diet break to help reset the metabolism and ensure we have a continued response to our nutrition intervention over the entire 12 weeks. Second, diet breaks are a more advanced tool in your arsenal. How and when to use them is a complex subject that is covered in more depth in our other courses. If you plan to use them on a regular basis, we highly recommend you consider our more advanced nutrition courses, where you will get a complete understanding of how they interact with hormones and the metabolism. We include it here as part of the Art of Gen Pop transformation system, not as a standalone intervention. We often see coaches underestimating how deep they can go with a caloric deficit, so inserting diet breaks where they are not needed can be counterproductive when you're after an epic transformation. But don't worry, follow the system as we outline it here and you'll get a world-class result. And if you want to get even further educated on the topic, we have you covered there as well. Proper periodization of your client's nutrition during their weight loss journey will ensure they see continued results from their investment, and it's these continuous results that keep them motivated and engaged in the program. That said, don't forget to remain sensitive to your client's needs. If something isn't working for them, don't wait for the next phase in their periodization scheme. Work with them to find a solution to the challenge that works, and they'll stay with you and your program.